Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this video is about second year medical school at the University of Liverpool. Like my previous video on first year, I'm just going to talk about what you study and what advice I would give. So unfortunately I don't have my tripod with me right now and I don't have enough storage, so we're going to see how long this video lasts. So the first thing I want to talk about is placement, because that's the step up from first year to second year. So in second year you only have 3 weeks of placement in total, and they're scattered throughout the year. So you have a week in November, a week in February and a week in March as well. So there's 4 main hospitals that you can be placed in. So I was placed in Wiston, but you can be placed in the Royal, Aintree or Arrow Park as well. Now I remember this was like a really big thing about what hospital you're placed in, and to be honest with you, I don't really think it matters that much because the teaching does vary a bit from hospital to hospital. I personally really liked Wiston, even though by bus it was an hour. During the last week I did get a lift with my friend because he started to drive. So just to emphasize, whatever hospital you do get put in, it really doesn't matter. In terms of what wards you get put on in placement, it does depend what hospital you're at. So with Wiston I was in the same ward for 3 weeks, which was the respiratory ward. However, some of my friends were changing wards, so in November they would be, let's say, in respiratory, and then in February and March they'd be in a different ward. So it just kind of depends what hospital you're in and how they're planning education in that year. So in terms of the portfolio requirements, you basically have your own portfolio on Pebble Pad, and within that you have a certain set of requirements that you have to meet. So obviously in first year you've been taught how to take histories of a patient, and you still get taught in second year but in a bit more depth. So you have to get a minimum, for example, of eight histories signed off by doctors or anyone who's trained to take histories. For us, the minimum requirement also had like 1 consultant signing you off as well. And then you have lots of other things, like in clinical skills in first year you learn a bunch of procedures, and in second year so you have to get a minimum number of those, and there's lots of others, but you will come to that when you see that in second year. I think the best part about second year is placement. So when you go, like, make sure you fully enjoy it. Obviously try and get as much as you can ticked off in the first and second week, ideally most of it in the first week and then maybe 2 or 3 things left in the second week. It's completely fine if you don't manage to do that, because it is kind of dependent on what ward you're on, what sort of doctors there are, and how many opportunities there are for you to get all those stuff done. Obviously if you are struggling, I would contact your year team or the hospital team, and a lot of the time I don't know if this was okay, but a lot of the time you can go on other wards and see other opportunities and try and do it there, but most of the time it is advised that you stay on your ward. Moving on to the content, so it's very similar to first year in that you do block by block system, but you're working backwards. So in first year you finish with neuro, so you start with neuro in second year. Content this time is quite different. It is a huge step up from first year, so a lot of what you're doing is looking at conditions and when things go wrong, as opposed to just the physiology. At first it was quite tough for me to kind of catch on what I needed to do, how I needed to take notes. Speaking of notes, I actually switched to using Anki now in second year. Best decision I've made. And what I did was, because in first year I didn't take any Anki notes, before I would start a block I would go through all the year 1 slides and make Anki notes off them. I think the best part about Anki is that it's just direct recall. You can look back on notes if you want to, you can search keywords, you can literally do it anywhere, like you can do it on the train, in the car. I guess the annoying thing is that the app is a lot of money if you do have an Apple iPhone or an Apple device, but I haven't downloaded the app, I just kind of use my data to log in on the website. Also, you do learn a bit about management, and they do say that, oh, you don't really need to know much about it and you're not tested on it. You kind of are. And that's the problem with med school, like it is very unpredictable in terms of what they're going to ask you in exams and what they're going to test you on. So my biggest advice is that whatever is on the slide, a lot of the time they can test you anything on it. That being said, you do kind of have to be careful with how you take your notes. You can't take notes on absolutely everything, and at first you're really confused, like what do I write down? But over time you do realise what you need to know and what you don't need to know. I don't think I mentioned this in the first year video, but when you're doing end of blocks, a lot of people do use their notes or do it with friends. For the first few I would recommend doing it closed book, just to see how you're doing, just to see if you're actually grasping the content properly. In terms of all the additional sessions, so you have usual CCP sessions, and they're very similar to the first year ones, probably just building up a little on it. Clinical skills 2, you're just learning how to take blood, which is really exciting because that's what you also do on placement as well. And you also do all the same clinical skills from first year, but in a bit more depth So you look at when things are actually wrong and what can go wrong when you're examining a patient. You also have PPGH sessions, but you don't have as much of them, I don't think. We used to have them every week in first year, but I'm not sure. Same with anatomy, you have 2 per block. Speaking of blocks, a lot of the time in second year, like for most of it, you're doing 2 blocks at the same time. So you have foundation block 1, 2 and 3, and you do them at the same time as the other science of medicine blocks like respiratory, cardiovascular and all of those. And to be honest, that at first that was quite difficult to kind of manage 2 blocks, but you do realize that with the foundation blocks they have less lectures, so you kind of do find time for those, and I wouldn't just leave them to last minute because they will build up. Okay, exams. So what's really different is that we have our mock in March as opposed to January from first year, and the mock is all of the content that you've covered up until then, and then our real exams are in June and end of June. So we have obviously the written exam, which is 120 marks I think, and you have sequence 1 and sequence 2. Now I'm trying to get this in my head, obviously it's only April now and I haven't sat the exams yet, but it was a lot easier to pass sequence 1 in year 1 than it will be in year 2. So I am kind of expecting myself to sit sequence 2. You also have mock OSCEs, and these are formative, so that means that they don't count. So an OSCE is basically all the clinical skills you've learned, history taking, even sometimes anatomy I think, and you have like, I think it's either 8 or 9 different stations and you're tested on those skills. Obviously I haven't sat any OSCE yet, so I can't really talk about that much, but once I have, I might make a video on like my advice for OSCEs. Also have a research project. Obviously in first year you had RS1, which was just an abstract. That was pretty simple, there wasn't really much that you had to do with that. However, in year 2 you have to do something called a critical appraisal. You do have workshops leading up to that, so that's nothing to stress about. I don't think it's too difficult, it is relatively simple. Once you've been to the workshops you know what you need to appraise. I might also make a separate video on RS2 and how to critically appraise a paper. So those are the main exams that you have. Unfortunately, obviously we finish a lot later this year, whereas in first year you would have been finished by June. Work-life balance. I definitely say it is a lot more difficult in second year to do that, but then I say that and I spent a lot of my time still with friends and outside. I think the main reason for that was because I was part of Hindu society. So even though people say that, oh, you won't have time to manage stuff in second year, I would strongly recommend joining a society because it does challenge you to balance your work and society commitments at the same time. I would join a society that you know you're going to enjoy and you have the right friends surrounding you. It does force you out your room other than just doing work. And although at first it seems like that's so much effort, once it's over you do realize how much you miss it. I always set myself a timetable, so I do Monday to Friday or Monday to Sunday, and I wouldn't do anything further than that, and I'd write down what I have on each day and what I want to get done. Again, setting realistic aims is the most important thing. One thing I would also really recommend is taking part in the School of Medicine prizes. A lot of people didn't really know about this, and I think in first year they mentioned it in a presentation at the end of the year. Nobody was paying attention. I mean, I was barely paying attention. I did grasp on that there was a prize, and I saw that there was like £200 value to it. It was over summer. This year they've made it the deadline May, so it's harder to actually do the prize. And I gave it a go. I didn't think I was going to win because it was open to years 1 to 5, and I won. It's also really good to have a prize on your CV, on your HERE application, because later on in jobs when they're looking for applicants or choosing one person over another, they might see that you have a prize. I think if you go on the School of Medicine prizes page, they have a list of prizes available for each year group, like year 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Obviously you don't want to do it at the expense of your own work. During my time I could do the prize over summer, so it wasn't much of an issue. Okay, my phone is literally about to die, so I am sorry this is such a short video. We'll be making more videos soon. If you want any advice, feel free to message me on Instagram. It will be in the description. Thank you for watching. Bye.